Sir, you're not going anywhere until I see that receipt. Stop right there.
Move. You don't get to detain me because you feel like it.
Drop the bag. Show me the receipt. Now.
I'm not required to. You have zero reason to stop me.
You're not free to go until I say you're free to go.
Say it again for the cameras because you're crossing the line.
Sir, you're not going anywhere until I see that receipt. Stop right there. The demand wasn't a request. It was a command barked across the polished tile floor of the Tech Haven entrance. It was the kind of tone used to startle a teenager shoplifting a candy bar, not to address a 54-year-old man in a bespoke charcoal suit. Marcus Thorne didn't break stride. He adjusted the grip on the bag in his left hand, a heavy, reinforced shopping bag containing a high-performance drive array and a secure laptop items, essential for the upcoming audit of a shell company in the Caymans, and continued toward the automatic doors. The California sun was already baking the asphalt outside, visible through the glass, promising a heat that would punish anyone standing still. "Sir, I am talking to you." The loss prevention employee, a man in a yellow polo shirt that strained against a midsection built on fast food and inactivity, stepped directly into Marcus's path. He extended a hand, palm up, fingers wiggling expectantly. "Receipt, now, store policy." Marcus stopped. He didn't sigh, though the temptation was there. He stood 6'2", his posture honed by years of federal service and the discipline required to stare down cartel accountants and money launderers who had dissolved people in acid for less than what Marcus knew about them. He looked at the employee whose name tag read Gary over the rim of his glasses. "Gary," Marcus said, his voice a deep resonant baritone that carried without shouting. "I have purchased these items. They are now my property. I am leaving the store. I do not consent to a search of my personal property, and I am not showing you my receipt. Please step aside." "You can't leave," Gary sputtered, blinking rapidly. He hadn't expected the calm refusal. He expected compliance or a run for it. "It's policy. Check the sign on the door. We check all receipts." "Policy is not law, Gary," Marcus replied, sidestepping him smoothly. "And unless you have probable cause to believe I've committed a crime, which you don't, as I paid at Register 4 with a cashier named Sarah not 3 minutes ago, you are dangerously close to committing false imprisonment. Have a good afternoon." Marcus moved to walk past, but Gary was panicking. He looked over Marcus's shoulder and saw exactly what he needed. "Officer! Officer, help! He's refusing to stop. He's trying to walk out with merchandise." Marcus paused and closed his eyes for a brief second. He knew that specific vibration in the air, the shift from a retail annoyance to a potentially life-altering encounter. He turned slowly. Walking toward them from the vestibule was a uniformed police officer. He was young, perhaps late 20s, with the freshly pressed uniform and the aggressive gait of someone who spent too much time looking for a fight and not enough time learning the community. His nameplate read Braden. He had his thumbs hooked into his duty belt resting near his equipment, his eyes locked on Marcus with a predator's focus. "Is there a problem here, folks?" Braden asked, though he wasn't looking at Gary. He was sizing up Marcus, taking in the suit, the expensive watch, and the large bag. In Braden's eyes, Marcus saw the calculation happening, the bias kicking in, overriding logic. A black man, a high-value bag, a refusal to comply. In Braden's mind, the narrative was already written. "He won't show the receipt, officer," Gary said, emboldened now. "He's trying to push past me with a bag full of electronics." Officer Braden stepped into Marcus's personal space, violating the reactionary gap standard taught in every academy, an intimidation tactic that Marcus had seen 1,000 times. "Drop the bag, sir," Braden said. It wasn't a question. "And let's see that receipt." Marcus held the bag firm. "Officer, I am not required to show a receipt to leave a store. I have committed no crime. Unless you have articulable, reasonable suspicion that I have committed a theft, this conversation is over." I said. Braden's voice dropped an octave, trying to sound menacing. "Show me the receipt, or we're going to have a problem." Officer Kyle Braden was 29 years old and had been on the force for 4 years. He was the type of officer who believed that respect was something you demanded with a badge not earned with judgment. He saw the world in binary terms, sheep and wolves. And right now he was decided that the man in front of him, despite the nice suit, despite the calm demeanor, was a wolf trying to pull a fast one. "Sir, you need to lower your voice and listen to instructions," Braden said, though Marcus hadn't raised his voice a single decibel. It was a standard tactic accuse the subject of aggression to justify your own escalation. "My voice is level Officer Braden," Marcus said, reading the nameplate intentionally. "I am simply asserting my Fourth Amendment rights. I have purchased this property. The transaction is concluded. I am free to go." "You're not free to go until I say you're free to go," Braden snapped. He moved his hand from his belt buckle to rest on the grip of his taser. The yellow plastic seemed to scream in the fluorescent lighting of the store entrance. Shoppers were stopping now. The flow of commerce had halted. A woman with a stroller backed away nervously. 2 teenagers near the kiosk pulled out their phones, the universal signal that things were about to get ugly. "Officer," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a tone that was almost professorial. "Let me be very clear so there is no misunderstanding. You are currently detained me. For a detention to be lawful, you must have reasonable suspicion based on specific and articulable facts that criminal activity is afoot. A refusal to show a receipt to a store greeter does not constitute reasonable suspicion. There is case law on this. Florida v. J.L. Terry versus Ohio. You are fishing." Braden's face reddened. He wasn't used to suspects citing Supreme Court cases. He was used to fear. He was used to people stammering excuses. This man's confidence felt like an insult. It felt like a threat. "I don't need a law lecture from a shoplifter," Braden sneered. "Gary here says you're stealing. That's my suspicion." "Gary said I refused to show a receipt," Marcus corrected. "Did you see me take anything without paying Gary?" Gary hesitated, looking between the looming officer and the stone-faced man in the suit. "Well, no. But why won't you just show it, if you have nothing to hide?" "Because in this country, citizens are not required to prove their innocence to authority figures on a whim." Marcus said, his eyes never leaving Braden's face. "We have rights, and I am exercising mine." Braden had heard enough. He stepped closer, his chest almost bumping Marcus. "I'm done asking. Give me your ID, now. We're going to run you and see what warrants pop up. Guys like you always have something." "Guys like me?" Marcus asked, a dangerous edge entering his voice for the first time. "And what kind of guy is that, officer?" "The kind that argues with police in a mall." Braden deflected, realizing he might have slipped. "ID, now. Failure to identify is a crime." "Only if I am lawfully arrested or detained for a valid crime," Marcus countered. "Which I am not. I am not providing identification. I am leaving." Marcus made to turn a slow, deliberate movement to show he wasn't fleeing, just ending the encounter. Braden reacted on instinct and anger. He grabbed Marcus's arm, his fingers digging into the expensive wool of the suit jacket. "Don't you walk away from me!" Braden shouted. Marcus froze. He looked down at the hand on his arm, then up at Braden's eyes. "Officer, remove your hand," Marcus said. The temperature in the entryway seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You are now committing battery. I strongly suggest you rethink your next move." The silence that followed Marcus's statement was heavy, thick with the tension of a stretched rubber band about to snap. The crowd had grown. There were at least 10 phones pointed at them now, little black rectangles capturing every pixel of Officer Braden's flushed face and Marcus Thorne's immovable resolve. "Battery." Braden let out a short, incredulous laugh. "I'm conducting an investigation. You're resisting." "I am not resisting." Marcus said, holding his hands slightly out to his sides, the shopping bag still firmly gripped in his left hand. I am standing still. I am verbally asserting my rights. You grabbed me. That is a seizure. And since you still haven't articulated a crime, it is an unlawful one. Braden released the arm but didn't back down. He couldn't, not with the audience watching, not with Gary. The loss prevention guy looking at him like he was the only thing standing between order and chaos. His ego was in the driver's seat now, and it had a lead foot. You want to play lawyer, fine. Braden spat. Put the bag on the floor. Hands behind your back. I'm detaining you for investigation of grand larceny. Based on what evidence? Marcus asked. He didn't move to comply. A hunch, a bias. You need more than that to detain someone for a felony. I have a witness. Braden pointed a shaking finger at Gary. You have a store employee who is annoyed I didn't follow a voluntary policy. Marcus corrected. Officer, look at me. Look at my demeanor. Look at the situation. You are making a mistake that is going to cost you more than just your afternoon. I am giving you an off-ramp here. Let me walk to my car and we can pretend this didn't happen. You threatening me? Braden's hand went back to his taser, unsnapping the retention hood. The click was audible. I am educating you, Marcus said. I'm trying to save your career. Get on the ground! Braden yelled, his voice cracking. The escalation was irrational, fueled by adrenaline and the terrified realization that he was losing control of the interaction. Get on the ground now or you're going to get tased. The crowd gasped. He didn't do anything, a woman shouted from the back. He just bought a computer. I saw him in line. Back up! Braden screamed at the onlookers, waving his free hand while keeping his right hand on the taser grip. Everyone back the hell up. This is a police operation. He turned back to Marcus, who hadn't flinched. Marcus stood like a statue, his expression one of profound disappointment. Ma'am, Marcus called out to the woman who had shouted without taking his eyes off Braden. Thank you. Please keep recording. Do not stop. Last chance. Braden pulled the taser from its holster. The red laser dot danced on Marcus's chest right over the silk tie. On the ground. I will not get on the ground, Marcus said calmly. I am 74 inches tall and I have bad knees. Moreover, I will not submit to an unlawful order. If you deploy that weapon, you will be using excessive force on a non-violent, non-threatening subject who is passively resisting an unlawful arrest. That is a clear violation of the Fourth Amendment and department policy. Braden hesitated. The taser felt heavy in his hand. The man wasn't screaming. He wasn't fighting. He was just speaking. But the words felt like punches. Braden holstered the taser, realizing that shooting an old guy in a suit might look bad on the news. Instead, he reached for his handcuffs. Fine. We'll do it the hard way. Braden lunged forward, grabbing Marcus's wrist and twisting it behind his back with force that was entirely unnecessary. Ow! Marcus said a flat statement of fact as his shoulder joint was torqued. You are hurting me. I am not resisting. Stop fighting. Up! Braden yelled for the cameras despite Marcus standing perfectly still. Stop resisting. I am not resisting. Marcus repeated, his voice tight with pain but controlled. He dropped the shopping bag. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. The bag contains delicate electronics. If they are damaged, you will be liable for that as well. Shut up. Braden slammed Marcus against the glass wall of the vestibule. The impact rattled the automatic doors. He wrenched Marcus's other arm back. The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into Marcus's wrists. Braden ratcheted them tight, too tight. You're under arrest. Braden panted close to Marcus's ear. Disorderly conduct, obstruction of justice, and resisting arrest. You cannot have resisting arrest without a valid underlying arrest, Marcus whispered. But you'll learn that in court. Braden spun Marcus around. Walk. He shoved Marcus toward the exit. The crowd had formed a semicircle outside. There were phones everywhere. People were angry. "Why are you arresting him?" a man in a construction vest yelled. "He showed you he paid." "Back off!" Braden shouted, his face slick with sweat. He was marching Marcus toward his patrol car parked in the fire lane. Marcus walked with dignity despite his hands being bound behind him. He kept his head up. He looked at the cameras. "My name is Marcus Thorne," he said loud enough for the phones to pick up. "I am being arrested by Officer Braden of the City Police Department for refusing to show a receipt. I have committed no crime. I am a calm, compliant citizen." "I said shut your mouth." Braden opened the back door of his cruiser and pushed Marcus inside. He didn't watch Marcus's head. Marcus had to duck quickly to avoid slamming his skull against the door frame. Braden slammed the door shut, cutting off the noise of the crowd. He stood there for a moment, breathing hard, hands on his knees. He felt a surge of triumph. He had won. He had taken control. The guy in the suit thought he was special, but nobody was special when they were in the back of a cage. Braden walked around to the driver's seat and got in. He didn't look at Marcus. He started the engine and peeled away from the curb sirens, blipping once to clear the pedestrians who were slow to move. "Before we see what happens on the ride to the station, I have a question for you all. Have you ever been in a situation where someone with a little bit of power tried to bully you just because they could? Did you fight back or stay quiet? Let me know in the comments." In the back seat, Marcus shifted his weight. The cuffs were cutting off his circulation. The hard plastic seat was digging into his spine. But his mind was clear. He was already drafting the affidavit. He was listing the witnesses. He was calculating the settlement. He looked at the back of Braden's head. The officer was adjusting his rearview mirror, looking at his own eyes, checking his reflection. He looked wired. "You have the right to remain silent," Braden recited quickly, almost as an afterthought, as they merged onto the main road. "Anything you say can and will be used against you." Marcus listened to the Miranda warning. It was the only part of the procedure Braden had gotten right so far. "Do you understand these rights?" Braden asked, eyeing Marcus in the mirror. Marcus said nothing. He stared straight ahead. "I asked if you understood," Braden said louder. Silence. "Fine. Be a mute. See if that helps you with the judge." Marcus wasn't being mute to be difficult. He was being mute because he was a professional. He knew that anything he said could be twisted. He knew that the time for talking was over. The time for evidence was now, and the biggest piece of evidence was currently driving the car. The drive to the precinct took 20 minutes. For Officer Braden, it was a victory lap. He had the radio on low, listening to the chatter of dispatch, feeling the adrenaline slowly taper off into a smug satisfaction. He occasionally glanced in the rearview mirror, hoping to see the man in the suit looking scared or pleading for a break. But Marcus Thorne was a void in the back seat. He sat perfectly upright, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He was practicing a technique he had learned 20 years ago during a joint task force operation, tactical dissociation. He wasn't in the back of a police car. He was in a workspace analyzing data. Violation 1, Marcus cataloged mentally. Failure to double-lock handcuffs. I can feel them tightening with every bump in the road. That's a policy violation and a tort claim for nerve damage. Violation 2, he noted as Braden took a corner too sharp, sending Marcus sliding across the plastic seat because Braden hadn't buckled him in. Failure to secure a prisoner. Negligence. Violation 3, Marcus thought as he listened to Braden muttering to himself. Think you're some big shot. Show me a receipt. Simple stuff. Prejudicial conduct. The officer is verbalizing his bias. Marcus thought about his ID in his back pocket. It was in a slim leather wallet separate from his cash clip. It contained his badge, a gold shield with the Department of the Treasury seal, and his commission book signed by the Secretary of the Treasury. He was a GS-14 special agent, a criminal investigator. He had the authority to investigate financial crimes, money laundering, and tax evasion at the highest levels. He carried a Glock 19 currently locked in the biometric safe in the trunk of his own car back at the mall. He had arrested people who owned private islands. He had stared down cartel bosses in interrogation rooms in El Paso. And now he was being lectured by a 29-year-old patrolman who probably didn't know the difference between a 1040 and a W-2. You know, Braden said, breaking the silence again, needing to fill the void. If you had just shown the receipt, you'd be home right now, playing with your new computer. Now you're going to spend the night in holding. Maybe get arraigned Monday. Hope you didn't have plans. Marcus remained silent. He focused on his breathing. Inhale for 4, hold for 4. Exhale for 4. What do you do anyway? Braden asked, looking for a hook. You dress like a lawyer. You a lawyer. That why you think you know the law? Silence. Cat got your tongue, or you just realizing how stupid you were? Braden laughed to himself. He picked up his radio mic. Dispatch Unit 4 Alpha. En route to station with 1 male in custody. Code 4. 10-4-4 Alpha. The dispatcher crackled back. Marcus allowed himself a tiny, imperceptible smile. Code 4. No further assistance needed. That was the biggest lie of the day. Braden was going to need a lot of assistance. He was going to need a union rep, a lawyer, and a new job. The cruiser pulled into the precinct sally port. The heavy metal gate rattled shut behind them. The lighting was stark industrial fluorescent. Braden got out and opened the back door. Let's go. End of the line. He grabbed Marcus by the arm again to pull him out. Marcus stepped out stiffly, his shoulders aching. Watch your head, Braden said mockingly, not shielding the door frame this time either. They walked into the booking area. The smell of stale coffee, floor wax, and misery hit Marcus. It was a smell he knew well, but usually he was on the other side of the counter. The booking room was a flurry of low-level activity. A drunk was singing in a holding cell. 2 officers were typing reports at a bank of computers. Behind the high desk sat Sergeant Miller, a man with graying hair and eyes that had seen everything and was impressed by none of it. He was 55, a year older than Marcus, and carried the weary weight of 30 years on the job. Braden marched Marcus up to the counter. What do we have here, Kyle? Sergeant Miller asked, not looking up from his paperwork. Refusal to comply, disorderly obstruction, Braden said, puffing his chest out. Guy wouldn't show a receipt at Tech Haven. Caused a scene. Resisted arrest. Miller looked up then. He saw Marcus. He saw the suit. He saw the demeanor. He frowned. Over a receipt? He was acting suspicious. Braden defended. Refused ID. I see, Miller said. He looked at Marcus. Name. Marcus stayed silent. He's playing the silent game, Sarge, Braden said. Real tough guy. Sir, I need your name for booking, Miller said, his voice calmer, more professional than Braden's. Marcus finally spoke. I will provide my identification when my property is inventoried, Sergeant. Miller nodded. Fair enough. Empty your pockets. Everything on the counter. Braden uncuffed one of Marcus's hands. Marcus slowly reached into his suit jacket. He pulled out a Mont Blanc pen, a pair of sunglasses. Then he reached into his back pocket and pulled out the slim leather wallet. He placed it on the counter. Miller picked up the wallet. He opened it to check for a driver's license. The movement of Miller's hands stopped abruptly. The room seemed to go quiet, as if the air had been sucked out of the ventilation system. Miller stared at the open wallet. On the left side was a holographic ID card. On the right, a heavy gold badge with blue enamel. United States Treasury. Special Agent, Criminal Investigation. Miller looked at the badge. Then he looked at Marcus. Then he looked at the badge again. He slowly closed the wallet, but kept his hand on it as if it were a live grenade. Kyle, Miller said. His voice was very quiet. Yeah, Sarge. Braden was busy filling out a property form, oblivious. Did you check his ID before you brought him in? He wouldn't give it to me. Said it was his rights or whatever. Miller closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. Kyle, come here. What? Braden walked over. Miller slid the wallet across the counter. Look. Braden looked down. What is that, a security guard badge? Read it, you idiot, Miller hissed. Braden squinted. United States. Treasury criminal. Investigator. He looked up at Marcus. Marcus was looking directly at him. The look wasn't angry. It was something far worse. It was professional pity. He's a Fed, Braden whispered. He's not just a Fed. Kyle, Miller said, his voice rising. He's an IRS criminal investigator. Do you know what they do? They take down mobs. They audit departments. They put politicians in prison. Miller turned to Marcus. He stood up straight. Agent Thorne, sir. Sergeant. Marcus nodded. I'd like these handcuffs off. Now. Yes, sir. Immediately. Miller rushed around the desk. Keys, Kyle. Give me the keys. Braden fumbled for his keys, his hands suddenly shaking. I didn't know. He didn't tell me. He didn't have to tell you. Miller snapped, unlocking the cuffs. Marcus rubbed his wrists. There were deep red indentations where the metal had dug in. He rotated his shoulders. Thank you, Sergeant, Marcus said. I need my phone, and I need to speak to your watch commander. Lieutenant Freeman is in his office, Miller said. I'll get him. Sir, can I get you some water, coffee? I don't want coffee, Marcus said. I want to preserve the evidence. No one touches Officer Braden's body camera. No one touches the dash cam footage. If anything gets deleted, I will bring the full weight of the federal government down on this building. Is that clear? Crystal clear, sir, Miller said. He looked at Braden. Get in the break room, Kyle, and don't you dare touch your equipment. Braden looked like a ghost. He looked at Marcus one last time, realizing that the suspicious person he had bullied was about to dismantle his entire life. Lieutenant Freeman was a large man who usually projected an aura of absolute calm, but when he walked into the booking area 3 minutes later, he looked like a man walking to the gallows. He had already been briefed by Miller. Agent Thorne, Freeman said, extending a hand. Marcus didn't shake it. Freeman awkwardly lowered his hand. I am Lieutenant Freeman. I want to personally apologize for this misunderstanding. This wasn't a misunderstanding, Lieutenant, Marcus said. His voice echoed in the now silent booking room. This was an unlawful deprivation of rights under color of law. 18 U.S. Code Section 242, a federal crime. Freeman winced. Sir, Officer Braden is young. He made a judgment call. He made a biased call. Marcus cut him off. He detained me without reasonable suspicion. He arrested me for asserting my Fourth Amendment rights. He used excessive force. He failed to secure me in the vehicle. And he verbally harassed me based on my race. Marcus pulled out his phone. I am calling my special agent in charge. Then I am calling the U.S. attorney for this district. I suggest you call your chief and your city attorney. Agent Thorne, please, Freeman pleaded. Can we discuss this in my office? We can drop all charges immediately. We can expunge the arrest record right now. There's no need to make this a federal case. It already is a federal case, Marcus said, tapping the screen of his phone. Because I am a federal agent who was kidnapped by your officer. But it's not about me. It's about the guy who comes in here next week who isn't a federal agent. The guy who works at the grocery store. The guy who doesn't know case law. What happens to him? Freeman didn't have an answer. Officer Braden is a liability, Marcus continued. I saw it in his eyes. I saw it in his tactics. This wasn't his first time. It was just the first time he got caught by someone who could bite back. We will investigate, Freeman promised. Internal affairs. I will be filing a formal complaint, Marcus said, and a lawsuit. But right now I am leaving. I want a copy of the incident report, the booking sheet, and the property inventory. I want them now." "Of course," Freeman said. He turned to Miller. "Print everything. Now." Marcus made his call. He stood in the middle of the booking room, surrounded by nervous officers. "SAC Johnson. It's Thorne. Yes, I'm fine. I'm at the 4th Precinct. I need you to send a team over. No, I've been arrested. False arrest. Yes. The officer is... well, he's about to have a very bad year." Marcus looked over at the break room door. Through the small window, he could see Braden sitting at a table, head in his hands. "And Johnson," Marcus said into the phone, "send the Civil Rights Division liaison. We're going to need to look at this department's stop and ID stats. All of them." Freeman went pale. An IRS audit was bad. A DOJ civil rights investigation was a death sentence for a department's administration. The fallout was swift, public, and devastating. The video from the woman in the parking lot hit social media before Marcus had even left the station. By the next morning, it had 4 million views. The hashtag #TechHavenArrest was trending globally. The image of Marcus Thorne, dignified, calm, suited, being shoved against the glass by a screaming, red-faced officer Braden, was the perfect visual representation of police overreach. But the real damage happened in the courtroom. Marcus's lawsuit didn't just target Braden. It targeted the city's training policies and the store's collusion with the police. The discovery phase was brutal. Marcus's lawyers working pro bono because Marcus donated the fees unearthed Braden's disciplinary file. There were 12 prior complaints. Excessive force, rudeness, racial profiling, all dismissed by supervisors as unfounded. Not this time. During the deposition, Marcus sat across from Braden. Braden looked smaller now, stripped of his uniform, wearing an ill-fitting suit. "Officer Braden," Marcus asked, acting as his own co-counsel, "can you articulate the specific crime I was committing when you detained me?" I thought you stole the computer," Braden mumbled. "Based on what facts? You looked like you didn't belong." "Because I was black?" "No, because you were resisting." "Asserting rights is not resisting, Mr. Braden," Marcus said softly. "It is citizenship." The city settled for $450,000 to avoid a jury trial that would have been a public relations massacre. As part of the settlement, the department was forced to rewrite its stop and identify policy and implement mandatory constitutional law training for all officers, taught ironically by a curriculum Marcus helped review. Kyle Braden was terminated. His certification was revoked by the state board, meaning he could never work as a police officer in the state again. The last Marcus heard Braden was working in a warehouse checking packing slips. A bitter irony that wasn't lost on anyone. Marcus took the $450,000 check and signed it over to the Legal Defense Fund and a local scholarship for law students from underrepresented communities. He didn't need the money. He needed the change. On a Tuesday afternoon 6 months later, Marcus walked back into Tech Haven. The new security guard nodded politely at him. "Good afternoon, sir," the guard said. "Good afternoon," Marcus replied. He bought a new hard drive. He walked to the exit. "Have a good day, sir," the greeter said, not asking for a receipt. "You too," Marcus said. He walked out into the sun. The air felt cleaner. The weight of the handcuffs was a memory, but the lesson remained. Freedom wasn't free. It was something you had to fight for, stand for, and sometimes be arrested for. Marcus got into his car, checked his reflection in the mirror, still the same calm, determined face, and drove away. He had work to do. There were still plenty of bullies in the world, and he had a badge to catch them. Conclusion. It's easy to watch a story like this and cheer for the victory. It feels good to see the bully get taken down, to see the bad cop lose his job, and the good guy win. But we have to remember something important. Marcus Thorne won because he was exceptional. He won because he was a federal agent, because he knew the law better than the officer, and because he had the resources to fight. What if he had been a 19-year-old student? What if he had been a construction worker with a prior record? What if he had been someone who got scared and ran? The outcome would have been very different. That is the tragedy hidden inside the victory. Justice shouldn't require a federal badge. It should be the default. This story is a reminder that knowing your rights is your first line of defense, but also that we have a long way to go before the system works for everyone, not just those who can fight back. What would you have done in Marcus's shoes? Would you have shown the receipt just to get home, or would you have stood your ground? And do you think the settlement was enough? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. If you believe in holding power accountable, hit that subscribe button. We have more stories coming that you won't want to miss. Stay safe out there.